toxic gas cloud killed thousands. It was August 21st, 1986, a night that began like any other in the remote villages nestled around Lake Nyos, a serene crater, lake high in the northwest region of Cameroon. Farmers, cattle herders, families, they were mostly asleep, unaware that beneath the placid surface of the lake, a deadly force was building. The air was still, the night was quiet, and the only sounds were the familiar calls of nocturnal creatures, soon to be silenced forever. But even as villagers drifted into slumber, something was terribly amiss. An invisible threat lurking in the depths, waiting to unleash its silent fury. The villages of Nyos, Subum, and Cha were vibrant communities, though isolated by the rugged terrain. Life was simple, dictated by the rhythms of the land and the seasons. Cattle were prized possessions, a source of sustenance and status. That night, many families slept soundly, anticipating the dawn, never realizing it would never arrive. The lake, a source of life and beauty, was about to become an instrument of death. Little did they know, the disaster was not entirely unpredictable. Whispers of past incidents, of strange smells, and unexplained animal deaths near the lake had circulated for years, largely dismissed as superstition or isolated events. Then, without warning, Lake Nyos erupted. Not in a volcanic explosion, but in a limnic eruption. A sudden release of dissolved carbon dioxide. Deep within the lake, CO2, seeping from the volcanic earth below, had been accumulating for decades. The pressure eventually became too great, triggering a catastrophic overturning of the water. Imagine a shaken soda bottle finally uncorked, but on a colossal, deadly scale, a massive cloud of odorless, colorless gas surged from the lake, heavier than air. It flowed down the surrounding valleys, suffocating everything in its path. The first sign of trouble was a strange, acrid smell reported by a few villagers who were still awake. Then came a feeling of intense heat, followed by a sudden inability to breathe. People collapsed where they stood, their lungs burning, their bodies starved of oxygen. Cattle, caught in the open fields, succumbed almost instantly. The gas descended upon sleeping villages like a shroud, turning homes into tombs. The lucky ones, those on higher ground or in well-ventilated areas, might have survived with severe respiratory problems, but most were doomed. The morning after was a scene of unimaginable horror. Villages lay silent, eerily still. Houses stood untouched, doors open, belongings undisturbed, but life was gone. Bodies littered the landscape, people, animals, all frozen in their final moments. The few survivors, disoriented and terrified, stumbled through the devastation, searching for loved ones, finding only death. The scale of the disaster was staggering. An estimated 1,700 people and thousands of animals perished in a matter of hours. The world struggled to understand what had happened. Initial reports spoke of a mysterious plague or a chemical attack. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and misinformation. Some whispered of government conspiracies, others of curses and evil spirits. Scientists rushed to the scene, desperately trying to unravel the puzzle and determine the cause of this unprecedented catastrophe. The government, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the disaster, struggled to provide aid and maintain order. Early investigations focused on the possibility of volcanic activity, but the lack of an eruption pointed to a a different explanation. Geologists discovered abnormally high concentrations of carbon dioxide in the lake water. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, revealing the phenomenon of a limnic eruption. The CO2 had been building up for years, trapped by the stratified layers of the lake. A minor disturbance, perhaps a landslide or a change in temperature, could have triggered the catastrophic release. The discovery of the limnic eruption was a breakthrough, but it also raised troubling questions. Why had this happened? And more importantly, could it happen again? Scientists warned that Lake Nyos was not unique. Other crater lakes in the region, also situated on volcanic fault lines, posed a similar threat. The Cameroonian government, facing international pressure, had to find a way to prevent another disaster. The immediate focus shifted to degassing the lake, slowly releasing the CO2 in a controlled manner. A French scientist, Michel Halbwatz, proposed a solution. Install pipes to siphon water from the bottom of the lake to the surface, allowing the CO2 to escape gradually. The project was ambitious and faced numerous logistical challenges. The remote location, the difficult terrain, and the lack of infrastructure made the task daunting. Initial attempts were met with skepticism and technical difficulties, but Halbwatz and his team persevered. Driven by the urgency to save lives, the degassing project was eventually successful. A network of pipes was installed, and the slow, controlled release of CO2 began. The risk of another catastrophic eruption was significantly reduced, but the scars of the Lake Nyos disaster remained. The surviving villagers were relocated, their lives forever changed. The fertile land around the lake was abandoned, a silent testament to the power of nature. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers lurking beneath the Earth's surface, but the tragedy also exposed a deeper, more insidious problem: corruption and mismanagement. While international aid poured in, intended to help the survivors and rebuild the devastated communities, much of it disappeared, diverted by corrupt officials. The promised infrastructure improvements never materialized. The relocated villagers struggled to adapt to their new surroundings, facing poverty and discrimination. The disaster, it seemed, had become another opportunity for exploitation. Adding to the suspicion, reports surfaced of unusual activity around Lake Nyos in the months leading up to the disaster. Some villagers claimed to have seen unidentified vehicles and strange men near the lake, conducting secretive operations. These reports were largely dismissed as conspiracy theories, but they fueled suspicion and distrust. Could there have been a connection between these activities and the eruption? Was the disaster truly a natural phenomenon, or was something else at play? Years later, the whispers persist. Some speculate that the lake was being used as an illegal dumping ground for toxic waste, and that the waste triggered the CO2 release. Others believe that secret military experiments were being conducted in the area. These theories remain unproven, but they highlight the lingering sense of unease and the lack of transparency surrounding the Lake Nyos disaster. The truth, it seems, may be buried as deep as the CO2 that once threatened to extinguish life in the region. The official explanation remains the limnic eruption, a natural disaster caused by the accumulation of carbon dioxide. But for the survivors, the questions linger. Why were warnings ignored? Why was aid diverted? Why did the world take so long to respond? The The Lake Nyos disaster serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of environmental neglect, the importance of scientific understanding, and the devastating consequences of corruption. Today, Lake Nyos is still monitored, a constant reminder of the tragedy that unfolded on its shores. The degassing project continues, ensuring that the CO2 levels remain at safe levels, but the memory of that fateful night in August 1986 will never fade. The empty villages, the silent fields, the lost lives, they are a permanent scar on the landscape, a testament to the unpredictable power of nature and the enduring capacity for human suffering. And perhaps the most chilling irony of the Lake Nyos disaster is this: the very gas that suffocated thousands, carbon dioxide, is now the subject of global concern as a greenhouse gas, driving climate change, localized tragedy caused by an overabundance of CO2 now foreshadows a global crisis fueled by the same invisible killer. The lake remains a silent monument, not only to a past catastrophe, but to a future threat that looms ever larger.